Well, since the last time we talked, it's a pair of series victories for the New York Mets. They take 2 of 3 from the Los Angeles Dodgers, and they take 2 of 3 from the Chicago White Sox. 2 series wins, 2 series that feel very different because of the opponent that you faced, and we are here to break it all down. Welcome into another edition of the Bleav in Mets podcast. Chris Schubert, Jack McKessie back with you once again in your podcast feed, or if you like the video version of the show, over on Jack McKessie's YouTube channel, where Jack got a little clickbaity. He dabbled a little bit in being clickbaity with our title for our last episode about Juan Soto, because we broke down everything going on with Juan Soto the last time we were on. But we've got 2 series to break down. We'll talk about some recent performances, Mark Vientos, Pete Alonso, the struggles for Francisco Alvarez. So we will get into all of that. But first, how are you, my friend?
Chris, I'm good. I thought we were going to have a very different tone for this episode when I sat down and watched the New York Mets lose to the Los Angeles Dodgers on last Friday, with what was a heartbreaking loss, and I think a decent place to start our conversation about the last 2 series that the Mets won.
Yeah, you take 2 of 3 from the Dodgers, and on the surface, in a vacuum, you should feel great about that, right? The team that eliminated you from the playoffs last year, heartbreaking, stealing your chance of going to the World Series to take on the New York Yankees. Your first time seeing them since that moment. You're at home. The crowds were great all weekend long for that series. It was great to see all the Mets fans out in full force. And if I told you before the series started, you're going to take 2 out of 3 from them, you would have skipped down Times Square is celebrating that series. But you just feel like you missed a chance because of the way Friday night went down and the loss in extra innings, in which the New York Mets went 0 for 10 in extra innings, did not get a single hit in the 3 extra innings. In the 10th, in the 11th, and in the 12th, put up zeros for the Los Angeles Dodgers, but were unable to get that one run across. And I texted you at one point and I said, you deserve to lose this game if you're going to throw up zeros, if you're Edwin Diaz, if you're the Mets bullpen, and not bunt. Can I get a bunt? Can I get a bunt and a sac fly? You don't even need to get a hit, but can you move the guy over? Could we maybe try to steal third base? Could we then just try to get a sac fly to drive the run in? No. Offense went lifeless in the opener of this series. And so instead of being super excited, over the moon about a series win against the Dodgers, you feel like, what could have been? Could have been a sweep of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Could have felt a lot better about things. So unfortunately, that Friday game kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, but still a great weekend overall for the New York Mets.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. Like if you had told me going into that series, the Mets would have taken 2 out of 3, I'd been like, oh, that's a huge win. Dodgers still one of the best teams in baseball in terms of record, obviously in terms of talent. And to take 2 out of 3 after the heartbreak that was the NLCS, like, I'll take that 10 times out of 10. But I just feel a little greedy in knowing just how close the Mets were to sweeping that series. And it's not just like the lack of clutch hitting or frankly any hitting in the extra innings there. It's the great performances from the bullpen that you squander, from Diaz, from Reed Garrett. Brosban got a little shaky, but I mean, he's put in an impossible situation with the lack of offense. And not only did the Mets not get a hit with the runner starting at second base, twice in those extra innings, the Mets had bases loaded and weren't able to bring a single run across that would have won them the game. So frustrating start, much better latter 2 games of this series.
Well, and it's a crazy game on the surface, right? You have rain delays that knock the starting pitchers out early, so it's a bullpen game, and so you already know you're behind the 8 ball, and so you want to win that game because you both taxed your bullpen, and you don't want there to be a lingering effect into the next day. But, man, what have we seen from this team over and over again? They're just super resilient. You would expect that there would be a carryover effect going into the next game, knowing that you basically have nobody available in your bullpen because you used everybody. You're before the game even starts, you're trying to do the math of how are we going to get 27 outs if David Peterson only goes 5 or 6 innings? Like, how are you going to make this happen? Well, David Peterson said, don't worry, guys, I got you. I'll just throw 7 2/3, and then Edwin Diaz will do the rest. Yeah. And David Peterson reminding everybody, wanted to make sure everybody was on notice. Don't forget about him. You can talk about Clay Holmes. You can talk about Kodai Senga. You can talk about Sean Manaea. David Peterson wants to remind everybody how good he is because he went out there, dominated the Dodgers, dominated in particular Shohei Ohtani for 3 at-bats, and the best start we've seen from a Mets starter at any point this season, considering they didn't have anybody available. Like, the bullpen was taxed. So to only have to use Edwin Diaz to get 4 outs, just a masterful job by David Peterson. You tip your hat. I'm not wearing a hat on today's show, but you tip your hat to David Peterson because that was just an excellent start. Because the jokes before the game were, oh, David Peterson will go 8 innings and then Edwin Diaz will go the 9th. Like, the jokes were that you needed a complete game from David Peterson in order to win. And he basically did that. Good on Carlos Mendoza for sticking with him to face Shohei. I didn't like it. I was super concerned about facing Ohtani the 3rd time. I got scared throwing to him, even though it was left on left with the tying run on base. But man, David Peterson, and after the game, with the comment of all comments, he's just another hitter.
I mean,
the Stones to say that is just incredible.
Chills. Yeah, when I look at like the last pretty much a year, like if you count the baseball months of the year, I'm like, since last summer, since the second half of last year and into the first half of this year, it's hard to make a case that we shouldn't start calling David Peterson our new ace of this podcast, because the performances that he's put up with I believe sub-3 ERA in that span. I just know down the stretch last year had some incredible performances as a starter, came in as a reliever at a few points during the postseason that were masterful and important and clutch. And then to have this, what you called the best performance by a starting pitcher of the year, Chris, it's not even close.
No.
7 2/3. There hasn't been a starter that has gotten that far in a game, let alone put up the numbers that Peterson did in this one with 7 strikeouts, only 2 walks and 2 runs allowed against, I mean, let's just call a spade, the best lineup in MLB right now. And to make Shohei Ohtani look as fooled as he was, I haven't seen another pitcher really be able to do that to a hitter of his caliber on the Mets, at least. And I mean, you said it again. This was everything that the Mets hoped for going into this start, because after the fiasco the night before, the amount of bullpen taxation there was on arms because of the extra innings situation, because of the rain delay situation, and to have Peterson go 7 2/3 and have Diaz have the 4-out save, I mean, just a perfection, like a perfect game. And by the way, Juan Soto also coming through with a nice double to score a couple runs and break the game open for the Mets.
He missed the grand slam by a matter of inches. The place would have come unglued if he had that moment in that spot against the Dodgers. Yeah. They already came unglued once he hit the ball because they knew it was getting down. But boy, was there a brief moment where we all thought it was getting out, and it didn't. I pulled the numbers.
To the deepest part of the park. Like, it's just tough luck again for Soto.
I pulled the numbers while you were talking about Petey. Last year, Peterson in the second half pitched to a 2.79 ERA in 77 innings. Do you know that this year, in the first 58 innings, he's pitching to a 2.79 ERA? He is literally the same pitcher that he was in the second half of last year. He has been the unsung hero of this rotation. He gets forgotten about, I should say. I think people still assume that the old David Peterson is going to emerge at some point. The guy who lacks the command, the guy who walks a bunch of guys, the guy who allows those innings and those outings to spiral out of control. This is a different pitcher. He's been a different pitcher. Even the first half last year, he pitched to let me just have them. It was a 3.09 ERA in the first half last year. He was still excellent. He's been an excellent pitcher for now a year plus. So I think we turn the page and we say, this is just who he is at this point. The pitching lab, Jeremy Hefner, David Peterson, they've just come up with a game plan. They've come up with an arsenal, the usage of that arsenal, and they're just executing it. And David Peterson is executing it basically every single time he goes out there. And you need to start, if you aren't there yet, when David Peterson is on the bump, just assume the Mets are going to have a chance to win. Just assume he's going to have a great start, because that's who he has been as a pitcher for the last year plus.
I mean, you look at the situation that the Mets had coming into the season with Frankie Montas and Sean Manaea still have not pitched a single inning for the 2025 New York Mets, at least in the regular season, obviously. And the Mets are a game and a half, 2 games out of first place in the NL East. They're 12 games over 500. And it's because of efforts of guys like Peterson, of the Clay Holmes experiment working out for the Mets, the Kodai Senga situation panning out well so far. And you just have to tip your cap once again to Jeremy Hefner and the pitching lab. This is what we hoped for as almost like a best case scenario given the circumstances. And when Peterson goes and gives you 7 2/3 against the best lineup in MLB and is able to turn the page after a horrible loss the night before, like that's why the Mets are in a position that they are, even as guys like Soto are struggling, even as the Sean Manaeas and the Frankie Montases of your rotation haven't even pitched yet. Like, the Mets are in a position to win the NL East at this point of the season because of the pitching.
Pitching's just been excellent, and it's been not just the starters, it has been the bullpen. And another takeaway from this series, Reed Garrett got a chance to pick up his first save. And in fact, now as we're talking and doing this podcast, he's had 2 saves in about a 3-day span as the Mets, they're playing a lot of games in consecutive days. Not everybody is available. And so it just makes Carlos Mendoza's job a lot easier when he's got 3, 4. I mean, at this point right now, I think it's fair to say you can ask Edwin Diaz to get you a save.
Yeah.
You can ask Huascar Brazaban to get you a save. You can ask Reed Garrett to get you a save. And I think I'm ready to say you can ask Ryan Stanek to get you a save.
He's back. He's climbing back up the trust tree.
You have 4 guys that on any given night, you're going to feel good about giving them the ball in the 9th inning in a 1, 2, 3 run game to close things up and to get you a save. I got to tell you, I don't know if there's 5 other bullpens in baseball that can say that. Now, it ebbs and flows. I'm sure in 2 weeks, Reed Garrett will be off the trust tree and Ryan Stanek will be off the trust tree and Edwin Diaz will rotate through, right? But right now, they just have it locked down. Like if they have a lead after the 7th inning, you just assume they're going to win. You just assume they're going to hold on. Like you just don't get this upset stomach feeling that they're going to give it up the way probably some other teams in baseball certainly do. And that was on display in the finale of this series because they went to Stanek, Kranick, and Garrett, and those guys combined to throw up a bunch of zeros, and the Mets win the finale of this series, and they take a series from the Dodgers, and that leads right into the series with the White Sox, where Reed Garrett picks up another save in the second game of this series. And in the first game of this series, you get 0 offense whatsoever. You score 2 runs on sacrifice flies to win that game. Walk-off sacrifice fly from Francisco Lindor. We were due for a Francisco Lindor walk-off. We hadn't had one in a little bit. Got to keep up the quota for Lindor. Yeah. And that's how the Mets take 2 out of 3 from the White Sox. They don't play their best baseball. In fact, they play some pretty bad baseball, but they win 2-1 because timely hitting in the 8th, timely hitting in the 9th, a pair of sacrifice flies, and they beat a bad baseball team in the White Sox, and then the next day they hold on to win 6-4 with Reed Garrett picking up his second save. So it's 2 series that go really well for the Mets. It's 4 of 6. You would have liked a sweep, and we'll talk about Griffin Canning here in a second because it was not a good outing yesterday for him. But 4 of 6 at home. They're now 21-7 at home this season. Just good baseball team. Just good baseball team that's finding ways to win, even though things, and Mark Vientos said this, I think it was after the game yesterday, where he said that if this is struggling, our hitting with runners in scoring position and just our overall offensive struggling, we're still winning a lot of games. What is this going to look like when we are hitting? What does this look like when everything is firing on all cylinders? And I think he's right, because I don't think we've seen this team play their best brand of offensive baseball for more than a 2 or 3 game clip. Truthfully, I don't think we've seen them for 3 or 4 series in a row play their best offensive baseball.
No, and I think it's just another testament to how good the pitching has been. I mean, we saw it earlier this month when the pitching struggles a little bit, when they have a couple bumps in the road or a couple cracks, they start to show a couple cracks, like things can start to fall apart. But when you have guys like Peterson putting up the performances that they have, the bullpen performing well. By the way, I don't think we've mentioned Jose Castillo yet, but he has been like, the acquisition of the year so far.
Dude couldn't throw strikes in Arizona.
Yeah, you're familiar with him before he came to New York.
This Arizona team right now has a bullpen that is in complete shambles. And Castillo was here and couldn't hack it at the big league level. Just could not throw strikes. And he comes to New York. He comes to Jeremy Hefner in the New York Mets and has thrown 3 scoreless outings so far this season. And this team desperately needed somebody from the left side that they could trust, because they don't have Minter. They don't have Danny Young. I don't know if Genesis Cabrera was really going to be the long-term lefty that they trusted. They needed somebody to be that guy, and perhaps they have found that in Castillo. Yeah, I'm sorry that it took us 15 minutes to sing his praises, but he's been great too.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to read you some numbers that I think kind of point to the weirdness that the season has been, like just for the offensive side of things. Because if you remember, at the end of last year, down the stretch, and obviously in the postseason, I think specifically about the NLDS against the Phillies, the amount of situational hitting that went right for the Mets in terms of getting those big at-bats, those big hits with runners in scoring position and scoring the runs when they needed to, like that is what we expected this year's team identity to be, because a lot of the core lineup was the same. You had Juan Soto and things get better, but through the 6 games this weekend, the Mets went 2 for 14 in the opener against the Dodgers with runners in scoring position. I mean, that was obvious from the extra innings thing. 4 for 11, so a little bit better in game 2, but then 0 for 5 with runners in scoring position in game 3 of the series against the Dodgers. 1 for 7 in the first game of the White Sox series, 1 for 6 in the second game of the White Sox series, and 2 for 12 in the finale. So like, things are going to have to turn around at some point because we've seen that happen last year. And if the pitching stays the way it is, or even if it slips a little bit and the offense is able to start firing on all cylinders, like this team is going to be so scary to contend with.
Well, and the other part of it too is even if the current pitching, and we'll get to Griffin Canning in particular, if it slips a little bit, you have reinforcements on the way. I mean, Sean Manaea is arguably their best pitcher. He hasn't thrown an inning yet this season. You said that earlier. Frankie Montas, we haven't seen yet this season. And so, with what we know of Frankie Montas, if Griffin Canning starts to slip a little bit, I think you got way more than you bargained for with Griffin Canning. And if Frankie Montas just replaces him in the rotation and pitches to what we think Frankie Montas can be, or if Paul Blackburn joins this rotation, like they have options and they have decent, solid options. So even if some guys struggle, and honestly, the only guy I'm worried about struggling right now is Canning because nobody else is showing signs of maybe falling off at all. You've got options. You've got really good options. And I'm not doing the Tyler McGill thing again. I'm not doing it. He had a good start against the White Sox. I don't care. It was a start against Chicago. We said this is exactly what was going to happen, that he was going to look better. I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
I'm done with Tyler McGill.
I don't need to get on the McGill thing. I will say the excitement level about Manaea returning, about seeing what Frankie Montas has working with this pitching lab, and then seeing Paul Blackburn has been tearing it up, frankly, in his rehab starts in AAA.
He's done, right? He just had his last rehab start, so
yes.
They have to make a determination on him.
I think they were saying they're considering bringing him up as a 6th man in this upcoming stretch of, I think, 10 straight days of baseball. And so he would be like the kind of extra option to give Kodai Senga that extra rest that he's used to when the Mets are playing these long stretches.
So because they called up Brandon Waddell and he threw some great, by the way, shout out to him because it's going to go unnoticed. But the job that he did in the finale of this series against the White Sox to just mop up innings for this bullpen was great. But that feels like the clean move, right? Waddell down, Blackburn takes his spot. He's the long man, but he's really the 6th starter. And you can go to 6 starters for an extended period of time. So not really a huge roster crunch there for them. Feels like they have a really natural move that they can make. And yeah, I mean, you look up and down this bullpen, Diaz, Garrett, Stanek, Kranick, Brazaban, Buteau, Castillo. You're good with that group. Like, you're fine with that group right now. So going to a 6-man rotation for a little bit wouldn't be the end of the world. And with the way Blackburn has been pitching, getting him a turn in there certainly could do wonders for the Mets. I do want to talk about Griffin Canning in particular because he has struggled his last 2 times out. One of them not really his fault. In that Dodgers start, it looks bad in the box score. It's 2 2/3. It's the 3 runs. It's the 4 walks. I wonder if those numbers look better if it's not for a rain delay and he can kind of settle down into the game. But that into a start where he only goes 3 innings, walks 4, gives up 5 runs, 3 of them earned. 3 straight starts for him where he's given up 2 runs or more. After going, let me do some quick math here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 straight starts, 1 run or fewer. A little bit of a blip here. And look, I don't want to immediately say, oh, get him out of the rotation. He's not pitching very well. But this is a credit to the Mets and their player development and their roster building. You're not going to be able to pitch poorly for start after start after start and not be replaced. Like, the Mets have other options ready to go that it's like, all right, Griffin, if you're going to struggle, Paul Blackburn's going to get a chance. Sean Manaea is going to get a chance. Frankie Montas is going to get a chance. Like, at some point, the results just have to be there, and it's unfair, but you're not going to get a long runway with how deep this rotation goes and the relative health of this rotation seemingly getting extremely, extremely healthy.
It's weird because we have to recontextualize what we expected from Canning coming into the season, which was maybe the 6th guy in this rotation. And then because of injuries, he got promoted up to the 5 starter. But then with how he's performed over the first month and a half before these last 2.5, 3 starts, like, he's looked like a legitimate 2 or 3 starter because he's holding these teams to 1 or fewer runs. Like you were talking about, that long stretch of 1 run or fewer, that's going to win you ball games. And so it's just notable now, because of how good he's performed, that he's starting to look a little bit more like the Griffin Canning we might have expected coming into this year, which is that 5 starter, not getting you the depth that you want, I'm mostly concerned about the walk numbers coming back up. Like we don't love seeing that lack of control. 4 walks in each of the last 2 starts, and
Yeah.
he didn't even get to that many in the outings before, where he had, obviously he went deeper into games. Like when you're only pitching 3 innings and you're walking 4 guys, and before that you would pitch at least 3 straight games of only 1 walk.
Yeah,
like,
8 walks over his last 2 starts, 3 walks the previous 3 starts before
Right,
that. So
right.
you and no offense to Griffin Canning, but you're Griffin Canning. Like you can't walk and give extra base runners and free at bats to the opposition.
Yeah.
We know what your limitations are as a starter, right? That fastball doesn't play. And if you have to start throwing that over to get strikes because you have guys on the base paths, now you start allowing extra base hits, and now runs start to score. And now those walks aren't just walks, they turn into runs. And now your starts kind of go sideways on you. So again, Griffin's been great this season. This is a little bit of a rough patch, but the unfortunate or fortunate, depending on how you want to look at it, thing for the New York Mets is they've got other guys, and they've got one guy in particular, Paul Blackburn, who is just ready to go. And I think he's just going to be the natural replacement, I think, in the short term, if they wanted to go that direction. Because if Canning continues to struggle, they're just not going to hand him the ball every 5th day. They won't do it.
I mean, the good-ish news for Canning going forward is the Mets' run of games up ahead is not one that is going to be extremely taxing on his mental capabilities, I guess.
Well,
I'll say
his next start is against the Dodgers. He does draw the Dodgers in his next start.
That's tough, but the stretch of, like, he might have some leeway to work with in terms of fan frustration with the Mets' the next 3 series being the Rockies, the Dodgers, and then the Rockies again.
Yeah, if there's winning this weekend against Colorado, if they split the series in LA against the Dodgers and they do more winning in Colorado, Griffin Canning, bad start, maybe doesn't register when you win like 8 of 10 games, right? Like you can kind of hide it. You can hide a bad start. It's when he has a bad start and they lose 4 games against the Dodgers and they lose 2 out of 3 to the Rockies, and it's panic city, right? Everybody's just freaking out and ready to make roster moves. I will tell you, Fangraphs has Paul Blackburn listed as the starter for the June 3rd game on Tuesday against the Dodgers. Now the Mets haven't announced that yet. They haven't made that roster move, but Fangraphs is kind of projecting it out that he's going to be that starter. Let's talk about the offense. We haven't done a huge deep dive with them. There are 2 players in particular that I really want to talk about, because I don't know if you felt this way, but I think we have a catcher controversy. And I think Luis Torrens should get the bulk of the playing time right now. And I know Alvarez was better this week, had a couple of key hits in the 8th inning, but it just feels like broadcast talked so much about this. He's tried to change his swing, tries to just go the other way, not trying to pull as much. Part of me feels like we've tinkered now too much, and we've now overcorrected in the other direction instead of just trying to, wherever the ball is served to us, do what the best outcome is with that. Stuff on the outside of the plate, let's go the other way. If it's stuff more on the inside of the plate, let's try to just turn it and burn it and put the ball 425 feet. It just feels like there was some over tinkering here. These are the numbers for Alvarez this season. He's hitting 243, which is a better average than he was hitting last year. A 341 on base percentage, way better than it was last year. But a 94 WRC plus. He's only worth 0.3 WAR. Better defensively. Only has 1 home run. Only driven in 7 RBIs. When he was talked about as a top prospect, and again, he's still only 23 years old, the hitting was supposed to be what got him to the big leagues. The defense was the question mark.
Yeah.
I don't worry about the defense. It's the hitting that's the huge question mark right now.
It's weird. I mean, I keep using that word because I just don't have another word for it. But I think part of the reason, or well, at least one reason we can maybe point to for Alvarez struggling the way he has been, is he didn't really have the set up the runway to be ready to perform at a consistent level on an everyday basis because of his injury to start this season. And when you look at how Luis Torrens has been performing of late, it's maybe because he's had the consistent everyday starting job, or he had it before Alvarez returned from his injury. And Torrens looks like the starter right now, just in terms of his offensive production. Yesterday against the White Sox, he had a 3-walk game. So like, he's seeing the strike zone really well. We've seen multiple times in the last 2 months how he's able to perform even when he gets deep in the count. He has 2 strike hits left and right. And for Alvarez, I almost wonder if there's like a mental thing of he sees how well Torrens is playing. He sees how not as great he's playing relative to expectation, and he's just pressing. And I remember when he first came up in, what was it, 2022, 2021?
Yep, 2022, the end of the
And
season.
it just felt like he had that same kind of energy where it seemed like he was trying too hard to prove that he was this former top prospect.
And that was also a terrible spot. Like the team in 2022 was leaking. It was the Titanic sinking, and they were shuffling deck chairs around. They were looking for anything to spark their offense. They were playing the most important series of the year in Atlanta. Their offense was non-existent, and they said, "Hey, you know what? Let's call up our top prospect and throw him right in there and ask him to save us." It was a spot that I don't even think you would put like Jackson Holiday. Like, I'm just thinking like top prospects. You wouldn't put any top prospect in that situation, but the Mets decided to do that, and it was just an unenviable spot. This is an interesting piece of information that I was looking at while you were talking. He's swinging. Last year, he swung at 46.1% of pitches. This year, he's swinging at 49.4% of pitches. So he is swinging more, over 3% more. And this, I don't know if the swing decisions are impacting him, but his swing percentage of pitches inside the zone is 72.5%. So he's swinging at 72.5% of pitches inside the zone. But which is more than he was last year. It's a good thing. But unfortunately, he's also swinging at more pitches outside of the zone. He's at 30.2% this year compared to 27.9% last year. And that 30.2% number, very similar to the 30.6% number that he had in 2022.
Yeah. And the one thing I've noticed, like a trend that I've noticed in terms of how pitchers are attacking him, like his weak spot is definitely up and in the zone, because I don't know if this was always a thing. I feel like it kind of has, but that up and in fastball, he just cannot catch up to. And he's always swinging, like he's swinging for the fences at those. And the results just aren't there. I don't know how much of that is a result of the swing tweaks that you were talking about, how much he's trying to push the ball the other way instead of letting himself pull it when he's getting those inside pitches. But it's just like, you can almost feel the frustration that he has especially because of how well Torrens has been playing in the spots where he's in the starting catcher role.
Yeah, I think for right now, Torrens should get the bulk of the playing time, and if Alvarez gets hot, then you can reward him by giving him more time, and you maybe can make it a 50-50 split just to keep Alvarez fresh. I mean, ideally, you have your catcher play most of the days and your backup catcher plays once a week. I think right now it should be more 50-50. That's a credit to Torrens. It's not just a shot at Alvarez and his struggles. It's a credit to Torrens. He has become one of the serious bats in this lineup, just being able to make things happen. And so you want to reward that. You want to reward the players who are coming through for you right now. Speaking of rewarding the players who are coming through for you right now, Brett Beatty is just taking over third base. Like, he's just a third baseman.
Yeah.
And Mark Vientos hit a home run, and hopefully that sparks things for him. He does have 6 home runs on the year, but he's hitting 235. And it feels very stop and start. Feels like we're always looking for the moment with Mark where we're like, that's it. That's when he's going to break out. And so this home run that he hit against Chicago feels like our next version of, okay, that's what's going to get him going. 6 of your next 10 games are against the Colorado Rockies. Does feel like this is, and you're going to go play at Coors for 3 games. Like, this feels like, if that's going to lead, if the home run that he hit yesterday is going to lead to something, this feels like the part of the schedule that you would circle, because Brett Beatty's playing great defense, made a great play the other day, and he's hitting, and he just looks like a confident player. And so, good problem for the Mets to have, right? You'd like Vientos to hit better to really make it a true competition. But Beatty coming up and hitting the way that he's been hitting when Winker went down and taking over the third base spot, like, he can't be that upset about it.
It's kind of making me rethink how I feel about the Alvarez situation, because Alvarez is struggling early in the season, and maybe that's because of the injury. And then when you look at Beatty and how we were talking about him earlier this year and how it looked like he was pressing, how he didn't really have the confidence. He wasn't punishing balls in the zone. He was chasing stuff outside of the zone because he'd take early strikes and then swing at not strikes because he got too deep into counts. I almost wonder if Alvarez is going to maybe have some kind of mentality switch and look like Brett Beatty has, which, like you said, has been excellent. Like he is taking over the third baseman position in a weirdly mirror-like situation from last year where Mark Vientos came up and took charge of the third base role. Yeah. Now the roles have reversed, and Beatty has clearly been the better bat on the team so far. I mean, Chris, I would go so far as to say he's been the best bat the Mets have had in the month of May, just because of the lack everywhere else, but also the power, the confidence, and the defense has been great. And then you hope that Mark Vientos can respond in kind and be able to reestablish himself, because we know what he's capable of. We saw what he did in NLCS, hitting that grand slam after seeing Francisco Lindor get intentionally walked in front of him and taking it personally. Like, we know what Vientos can be. We just haven't seen it yet. And it kind of goes back to our earlier conversation where, like, the Mets aren't firing on all cylinders offensively yet. And Mark Vientos struggling this early in the season is a part of that.
Yeah, I mean, before the season, I put Vientos in a tier of this is one of the bats that you just count on. And I based it all on how he handled the pressure-packed situation of the postseason. And I extrapolated that out and said, if he ever gets into a little mini slump, like, he's not going to be fazed by it, because he wasn't fazed by the brightest lights that the game has to offer. And I kind of misjudged that a little bit. He is pressing a little bit. It does feel like it's getting to him. But because I've seen him do it on a big stage, I do know that it could just take one or two solid games for him to then all of a sudden break out. And look, this Mets team's going to need Juan Soto to break out. They're going to need Mark Vientos to break out. They're going to need this offense to start to fire on all cylinders, because while they're going to be able to beat up on the White Sox, they're going to be able to beat up on the Rockies and the Marlins and the Nationals, the Pirates, some of the bad teams in both the National and American leagues. You're going to need that offense when it gets to the postseason. You're going to need that offense when you face the Phillies and the Braves in August and September with the division on the line. So, not worried yet. I'm not ready to panic. It's still somewhat early. I don't know how much longer we're going to be able to say that, but it is somewhat early. And so I want to give this team the bandwidth. And again, you get more bandwidth, you get more runway when you're 34-22 and you're playing poorly. Like, you just get more opportunities, at least for me. Like, I'm willing to give you more space to try to figure it out. If this team was, 5 games below 500, all right, we got to get a move on, or else this division's going to be lost before we get to July. It's just not the case. They're 2 games out of a playoff spot, and their percentage chance to make the playoffs right now, according to Fangraphs, is 80%. Like, yeah, they're fine. They're okay.
Using the same word that I've been using this whole episode. It's weird to know the Mets are 12 games above 500, and I still am, like, not sure if I should be excited yet, because like it feels like there's so much potential that hasn't been reached yet. And I know it's there. I've seen it from many of these players who are struggling right now. We don't know what the pitching rotation is going to look like when Manaea and Montas come back and Blackburn comes up. We don't know what the offense is going to look like when Mark Vientos is hitting and Alonso's continues to hit for power like he was in April, and Soto is breaking out. Like, and yet the Mets are still 12 games over 500 and have one of the best records in the National League. I just feel weird.
You almost take it for granted, and you don't actually enjoy the wins, because you know in your mind there are going to be more enjoyable wins coming, because you're like, man, Soto's not doing anything and Vientos isn't doing anything, and there's going to be those days where they score 8 or 9 runs and hit a bunch of home runs, and like, you're waiting for those days, and so you kind of take for granted what you're seeing so far. It's a 3-game series this weekend against the Rockies. It's the 3 best starters that the Mets have to offer. It's David Peterson, Kodai Senga, and Clay Holmes. And I'll say it, you should sweep this team. It's the worst team in baseball. They're not good. They're traveling on the road. It's not even like they have the Coors Field thing to fall back on. Your 3 best pitchers, I don't care how up and down your offense is, you got to sweep this team. You should have swept the White Sox. You should have, but you got to sweep this team this week. It's the worst team in baseball.
I mean, anything less than a sweep is disappointing for a couple of reasons. One, if the Mets lose any of these games, it'll be just the Rockies' 10th win of the season, which seems unbelievable. So you have a chance to hand the Rockies their 50th loss of the season before their 10th win. But also, I'm like in that weird Mets fan nervous post-traumatic stress situation where I'm like, there's no way the Mets are going to somehow give the Rockies their first series win of the season, right? Like, there's no way that's going to happen.
Just do it for the 1962 Mets. Just sweep the Rockies to help out the 1962 Mets. Move the Rockies,
the 2024 White Sox.
But we need somebody to definitively clear the 1962 Mets, or they're still going to be viewed as the worst team ever in baseball. And so we do the 62 Mets a solid. Just go out there and just help them out with a nice sweep. Two things I want to just shout out real quick. I read 2 really good stories this week. And for those who maybe want to take our recommendations, I highly recommend. There's a great Fangraph story where they interviewed David Stearns on how analytics has changed his role as a general manager. And I don't want to give too much of it away, but I thought it was, and I love listening to David. I listen to every one of his press conferences, anything that involves him. I love to listen to the way that he thinks about baseball, because I won't lie, it informs a lot of the way that I tend to think about the game. I learn a lot from listening to him, and I thought the story was a really, really cool look at how the data, how the information impacts his job. There's a great story in The Athletic about Francisco Lindor and how he interacts with his teammates and how he is as a leader. So shout out to The Athletic for that great story as well. So I don't want to call it homework, but if you want to read more about the New York Mets and you didn't see these stories, highly recommend checking them out. I know I said this last week that we were going to do a show after the Dodger series, and we didn't, but I promise you, podcast incoming after this Rocky series is done. Okay. I had some family in town last week. Things got a little sideways. We couldn't record Sunday night. We will record Sunday right after the series is done. We'll get that episode out to you Monday because it is a lot of baseball in a row. The Mets start on Friday, and we don't have an off day for a little bit. So a lot of baseball coming for the New York Mets, and we will be right here to break it all down. If you're new, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. We would greatly appreciate that. If you're watching us over on YouTube, hit that subscribe button so you know when the new episodes drop. We greatly appreciate that. But that is going to do it for us here on this edition of the Bleav in Mets podcast. We are back to break down what is a hopeful sweep of the Colorado Rockies. A huge, huge weekend for the offense. Huge weekend for Juan Soto. Excellent pitching across the board. Nothing is going to go wrong this weekend. It's going to be a great weekend for the New York Mets, and we will be here on Sunday to break it all down. I'm speaking it into existence to make Jack feel better about this weekend. But we'll be here to break it all down. Have a good weekend, everybody. And as always, let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.